So I thought today I'd do up a relatively short video just to talk about combat Jiu Jitsu and the history of it here in Tasmania and in Australia. In 2018, I was running an amateur MMA show in December, and I had a guy on it called Stefan Frederick, who's pretty well known in the Australian MMA circuit. Anyway, his son Hoshi, a professional MMA fighter, was really keen to get a match up on the same card, because I think it probably would have been one of the first events where a father and a son have both fought on the same card. So anyway, I thought this is a great idea, let's do something. We couldn't really get any matchups with him, so he actually said, hey, what about a combat jiu-jitsu match? And this is back in 2018, and I was fairly aware of combat jiu-jitsu, but it certainly never happened in Australia. In fact, I researched and couldn't find a match that had ever occurred. So what actually happened from there is we found an opponent, a guy called Deacon Law, who's a really up-and-comer for grappling in Australia at the moment. He's an absolute firecracker. So I spoke to good friends of mine, Natalie and Jeremy Frankham, who run 10th Planet Jiu-Jitsu here in Hobart, and just said, hey, this has come up. What do you guys reckon? So through the help of Jeremy and Nat, we managed to get to make contact with Eddie Bravo and have a conversation about sanctioning and rule sets and all that sort of stuff, just for a one-off match. So we managed to get all of that, and we managed to run the contest. The match took place on the MMA show. And after that, I was really, really intrigued in combat jiu-jitsu and thought, you know what, there's probably something here. There's something that we could do. Combat jiu-jitsu is really interesting. It's like the middle ground between grappling and MMA. It's almost like D-class MMA, I guess you could call it, with only being able to do open hand strikes. So moving forward to 2022, now we've done 6 full combat jiu-jitsu shows. We've done a lightweight tournament. We've done a heavyweight tournament. I tried to do an open weight tournament, but it got really difficult to sort of fill that. So the remaining 4 shows that we've done have all been set matchups. Each of those 6 shows, we've had 7 to 10 matches on there. And as I said, we've been running combat jiu-jitsu events in Tasmania since 2018, and we're still at this point the only state in Australia that's run a combat jiu-jitsu match or an event or a tournament of any description. We've also had the first ever female combat jiu-jitsu matchups in the Southern Hemisphere, which we did back in 2019, I think it was, 2020, before COVID. COVID's knocked us out, as it did us all. So the last event that we did in May this year in 2022 was actually meant to be November of 21, but COVID, we had another outbreak here in Tassie, so everything went into lockdown, so I had to postpone that event until May this year. What I can probably say, having done 6 events, is that combat jiu-jitsu is an absolutely incredibly exciting spectator sport. It's unbelievable. We managed to tap into most demographics, jiu-jitsu players, grappling fans, MMA fans, all can sort of come together. The biggest thing with combat jiu-jitsu is, of course, the matchups. And I know that's the case in MMA and grappling in general, but you've got to really put together two fighters that are really going to attempt to impose their will on each other and utilising strikes. We found that really strict jiu-jitsu players do quite well, providing they manage to get a finish early on. As the match continues on, because we run a 1 8-minute round, as it gets into the deeper part, the wrestlers or people who are experienced in MMA normally come out on top because they're much more capable of utilising strikes to better their advantage and look for a submission. We've had a heap of submission finishes. We've had a heap of TKOs. We've had referee stoppages. We've had doctor stoppages. In fact, I think I've had probably more cuts, blood, and broken noses in combat jiu-jitsu than I have in 3 MMA shows. Because it's just furious. It is just absolutely intense for 8 minutes. Our rule set's phenomenal. We built that with Eddie Bravo. We built that with 10th Planet. There's been some modifications throughout the last, 4 or 5 years of running these shows, because we've had to sort of streamline the rules to avoid any sort of stalling, because you have these kind of grey areas when it becomes when one can strike and when one cannot strike. So we've modified it to once one opponent is grounded, then strikes are legal both up and down, which absolutely changed it, completely changed the direction of these matches. Tactics and strategies have evolved as well. We've now got a lot of fighters that are working on taking a knee in order to land a strike on their opponent. That's a real big twist. We didn't see that one coming, and we've probably seen that in the last 2 shows with 2 specific matchups. Other than that, listen, Combat Jiu-Jitsu is amazing. It is something that has been blossoming down here in Tassie since I said 2018. We got plans to have Combat Jiu-Jitsu 7 this year, 2022, and then next year we'll hopefully run another 2 events. We've got a lot of interstate interest now. We've got a lot of professional MMA fighters. We've got a lot of professional grapplers that really want to come down to Tassie and get a taste for Combat Jiu-Jitsu. We've had a lot of interstaters already. Biggest names we've had down here so far would be Harry Gretsch, Robbie Pariah, Zachary Talbot. These guys were phenomenal athletes, phenomenal grapplers, and they absolutely dominated. So getting really top quality guys down to Tassie do Combat Jiu-Jitsu is probably my biggest goal moving forward with this. We were lucky enough to have the rockstar Cal Potter come down in May to be a guest judge, to see the show, to see the format, and he was absolutely blown away. So it was really good having Callan down so he could experience Combat Jiu-Jitsu and hopefully spread the word interstate so we can put on a bigger and better show this year. So anyway, guys, that's just a brief history of Combat Jiu-Jitsu in Tasmania, in Australia, in the Southern Hemisphere, and we look forward to slapping our way through over the next couple of years. Good on yous.